Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Rockville and Gaithersburg, and very proud to be the chair of the Next Generation 911 Commission. So I've talked about 911 for a lot of years now, but the back end, our first responders include our courageous firefighters. With me today is my friend, the executive director of the Montgomery County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, Eric Bernard. Eric, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come and kibitz with me.
Hey, good afternoon, Senator. It's my honor and pleasure.
Great. So there are a million questions I want to ask you, and I'm psyched to get started. Before we go to the fire stuff, I want to ask, you've been an adjunct professor at George Washington University for almost 20 years. Why don't you talk about that and any changes you've seen in your student body, and then we'll shift to the fire stuff.
Yes. At GW, adjunct part-time, and I enjoyed, of course, volunteers have other jobs. So that was my other profession. And I've seen a lot of change. I actually got my master's degree in the same program almost 30 years ago. And the drastic change we've seen is the students have become younger and are predominantly female. About 90% of our program, graduate program in forensic science, is now female and very young, right out of undergraduate. Right, I had some gap years in between, studied medicine in between, and went back for my master's. So I love teaching at GW. My goal there was to make more than the government paid. I used my GI Bill when I went there, and I have. That's
great. So you have now been at the fire squad for 17 years, give or take, which is an extraordinary career in public service. So first off, thank you. And you are not just in the fire station, you're out in the community and engaging, you know, the elected officials, you know, the community leaders, and that really makes you extraordinarily effective in my view. From your youngest years, when you were a little boy, did you grow up wanting to be a firefighter?
So yes, so the 17 years is when it became a paid avocation for me here in the county. I started when I was 15. So this month, starting in December, I will celebrate my 35th year at Rockville. And I've been doing it now for going on 42 years. So you can guess my age. I just had a birthday last week. So yeah, since I was a young kid, I knew one of the first pictures, black and white, that my parents have in front of our childhood home is me in a little fire chief's pedal car. So I always knew what I wanted to do, at least as a volunteer, and it led into a paid job 17 years ago when I left academia and law enforcement to do this full time.
Amazing. What did your folks think about the idea of you wanting to be a firefighter?
Well, I think all kids get the response from their parents, oh, that's great, very admirable. But as they grow up, they say, that's not really what you want to do, right? And in my case, there's no Jewish firemen. There can't be, no. But my parents, God bless them, were always supportive. Such mention, such kind-hearted people that both of them would drive me to the volunteer rescue squad outside of Pittsburgh, where I lived. Yes. On Friday nights, and then during spring break and winter break until I got my driver's license. So they were always very supportive.
That's fantastic. And we should acknowledge that you just lost your mom recently. So I'm so sorry, but it's lovely to hear that she was a supporter and cheerleader from the earliest ages.
Yes, very much so. And very proud. She told everybody, my son, the professor and firefighter, EMT paramedic. Yes.
That's fantastic. So what surprised you when you got into this field? Anything that was unexpected?
Well, I got in so young. I was surprised how all in volunteers get. A lot of questions I get from moms. We get a lot of high school people is, well, my child's not really going to go into the fire, right? Or she's not going to be in the car crash, right? She's ancillary. She's going to be outside of where the action is. And I explained to mom and dad that no, just because somebody's a volunteer doesn't mean they're not doing the full job description. Just means that they're not going to receive a paycheck. So I remember one of the first calls, and it was at this time of year and I had just turned 16, 2 days before Thanksgiving. And the day before Thanksgiving, we had an apartment fire where sadly an elderly woman died. And the firefighters, I was an EMT, brought me in there with no gear and to treat this woman who was obviously deceased. And I'm like, wow, here I am. I just turned 16. And one of my first calls is an apartment fire, which I'm watching a fire, and they bring me inside I had hoped to be able to treat the woman, but she had obviously had died. So that was a big shock.
Yeah. So a lot of people watch fire shows on TV. Do any of them get it right? Are they accurate? And what if they don't get it right? What do they do wrong?
Yeah, no, none of them get it right except for two older shows. First, those of us in the 70s will remember Emergency.
Yes.
John Roy DeSoto, very real. And that was the first fire-based EMS system in the country. So they got it right. And it's still on today. I have every DVD, as most firefighters, EMT medics have those DVDs. And I have my young neighbor kids, and they come and watch it. My kids grew up on it. So that's real. The other one that's real, which is really, it's a soap opera, starred Dennis O'Leary, and it was titled Rescue Me on FX, post 9/11 in FDNY. That has it right.
Wow. Okay. So
Everything else is wrong. Chicago fire.
Yeah, not it. So I used to watch Emergency as a kid, and was his name Randy Mantooth?
Randolph Mantooth.
So
Yep.
he was so cute. But all I remember is I was in a car crash. I was a passenger, and we actually rolled down an embankment. The car rolled over. And what happens at the bottom of the embankment on Emergency? What happens?
Boom.
The car blows up.
Right.
At the time, right? So I was like,
yeah.
oh my God, the car's going to blow up. Get out, get out. The car did not blow up. And we were both fine because we had our seatbelts on. But I was sure that the car was about to blow up.
Yeah. So parts of it they didn't get right for sure. But that interaction and how it's a whole lot of downtime, training, and those interpersonal relationships you build in a firehouse in a rescue squad versus the few minutes of action.
Right. So we just observed the 20-year anniversary of September 11th. Why don't you talk about both what the annual observance is for you and what that day was for you?
To me, they're one and the same. That day started, I was working, I was scheduled to be off that day from my pay job. And my father called me, and I just gotten out of the shower, and he was a stockbroker in Pittsburgh in one of the largest buildings on the East Coast, the U.S. Steel building, as it was called. He said, did you see what's going on? Got out of the shower, and I saw it on the news, and we're talking, and my radio's going nuts, but my cell phone's not. And remember those days we had Nextel, but my Nextel's chirping. That was the only thing that worked on 9/11, even for us as first responders. So that day, I immediately went to the Rockville Volunteer Fire Department, where I volunteer, and I was the president, not even a year then. And I spent the next 2 days at the firehouse. On the third day, I got called to New York. We have a sister company on Long Island, Manhasset, Lakeview, and we went to backfill their stations. And once we got there, we went immediately to the pile, and I spent almost 2 weeks in New York with other volunteers from Prince George's County and the Bladensburg Volunteer Fire Department. So they're, to me, the same. They bring back some memories that after the rescue mission was over, we went into recovery mode. And on that day, then Senator Hillary Clinton came, and it was one of the first days it was raining, and the mood had changed. We knew. And in all the time I had been there, we hadn't recovered anybody. We didn't even recover bodies. We were recovering small bits of human remains that if you ever have made homemade fried chicken, the skin, and you put flour on it, that's what we were finding. Bits of human remains that were covered in ash and dust. And, it was very sad. I generally remember 9/11 on my own. I did go up for the 10th and the 15th to be with members of the Manhasset Lakeville Volunteer Fire Department and FDNY. I proudly wear a ribbon that I got on 9/11. It was awarded afterwards. And then we had a volunteer from Rockville who went into the military, Thomas Barbieri, TJ, and he was killed fighting in Iraq. And his dad, who worked for Clark Construction, brought me a piece of 9/11 steel in a, I'll show it to you, it's on my desk, that reads WTC, to thank me for working with the fire department, working with his son when he came as a volunteer as a young man. And I struggle as
Wow.
most.
Have you had health implications afterwards that you would connect to 9/11? And were you offered mental health support, counseling after such a traumatic experience?
I haven't had any physical health, and
Seriously, knock on wood, right?
I have struggled with mental health from what I do forever. And I served in the military too. So one thing we do have phenomenally here in Montgomery County, and I credit Montgomery County government because they include the volunteers into this network, into all available benefits, including peer support and counseling, which I do regularly, and I promote it. We have on staff PhD and a licensed clinical social worker who work with all fire, EMS, paramedics, all the career volunteer, matters not. So I utilize those services.
Good.
So mental health is a constant. But thank goodness, physical health, I haven't had any issues.
Good, good, good. So you're role modeling that care is not just not a stigma, but like it's so important, and I do it and you should too. That's fantastic. Good for you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about recruitment. What challenges, how are things going? How are the numbers, and how has it changed or evolved during COVID?
Yeah, so I just finished. We have a couple grants that we have gotten through the federal government, known as SAFER grants for recruiting. And we have struggled. This county, again, I'm going to credit Mark Elrich, our executive, and the council who supported. Our volunteers in this county actually have collective bargaining. And we bargained some additional benefits during COVID, which went directly to our volunteers, which were, we call them nominal fees, cash incentives for the time served. So we saw a significant increase in volunteer participation during COVID, because what we had is a lot of college students who came home, were still having to take classes online, but they were doing them at the firehouse at the same time they were responding on calls. That we did great at. The problem was recruiting during COVID, because we couldn't send people to the training academy to learn the classes. We couldn't get out into the community. So our numbers have declined, but we redoubled our efforts. We did learn how to do things a little differently. So we're seeing a rebounding effect that we hope will continue in our trends of the number of people that are interested. It has not yet correlated into the number of people who have joined, though, and that's been our struggle, not just here in Montgomery County, but throughout the state and throughout the country. Some of my first travels post-COVID have been to conferences on recruitment and retention. I was in Cleveland in September. I went to Wyoming in October, and this month, I was in Florida, all studying recruitment and retention with other volunteers.
Right. Okay. When you think about recruitment, talk about diversity, if you would, not just ethnic diversity, but linguistic diversity, which is so important in our in Montgomery County and in the state of Maryland.
So it is so cool, and I'm so proud of here in Montgomery County, is that of our volunteers, the ones we've recruited over the last 17 years, these federal grants, over 50% are female, 50% are minority. We speak 23 different languages fluently. Nice. And on any given night, you can walk into a rescue squad or firehouse and hear from Korean to Yiddish, Hebrew, to Japanese, and most of us speak at least some Spanish. So yes, our diversity is one of the biggest strengths we have here in Montgomery County. Nice. And what's different than from the TV shows, and I think where Rescue Me gets it right, is that it's a very bravado atmosphere in a firehouse, no matter career or volunteer, right? These are people that are action oriented. So it takes a lot for us to change all people, but to get firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics to change, It's been difficult, but the change you can see in people studying languages and comparing languages and wanting to learn and have interest. And that brings with it my favorite part of the firehouse, which is food. We eat, you wouldn't believe some of the things we have being made in our firehouses, different ethnic foods. So
Nice.
they speak the language and we eat the food.
Nice, that works. And is that brought in by the volunteers or by community supporters or both?
Both, but generally because we cook for so many, when community supporters say, well, I want to donate to the firehouse, and they think, okay, there are 4 or 6 people in town. No, there's 29. That's a lot to cook for. So
Yes.
they'll bring in sides sometimes and desserts, but we do most of our own cooking.
Okay. Let's talk about the fire station. So it's old. It is not equipped for both women and men to sleep comfortably. And then obviously socially distanced during COVID presented some huge problems. Why don't you talk about the history and your hopes for the future?
So that's Rockville Volunteer Firehouse number 3. That was dedicated in 1966. And those of us,
we were born, but just barely.
Just barely. Yes. Rockville was a sleepy little community.
Yeah.
So that station was built for people to come from home. And people come through Rockville and may hear our house siren once in a while. We did it recently for a funeral. And it's a giant air raid siren.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we used to alert volunteers that there was an emergency. They would get in their personal vehicles, drive to the firehouse, and get on the ambulance or the rescue squad or the engine. Nowadays, we have volunteers and career 24/7 there to staff every unit at every minute. So that station wasn't built for that. We didn't have any women volunteers in 1966. So this station is much original, sadly. And we've seen what's happened to Rockville and the growth. So we desperately need new facilities.
So let's talk about your fantasy land. And this has been years in conversation, and I'm glad to now be a part of it along with County Council member Sydney Katz and others. Why don't you talk about what you're hoping we can get done?
So we're hoping either to renovate, but more what we really like to do is build new, so we can move from our old right into a new, avoiding a temporary facility, which is just nightmarish for anybody, but especially trying to provide emergency services. So we'd like to be able to have a lot where we can build a new station that meets today's needs, because we're not, and to meet our needs 15, 25, and 40 years down the road in the future. So that's what we're working on. There are a couple of prospects. You and I were at in 850 Hungerford Drive, the old historic building that's the county school board lot area. That is a potential or redevelopment in the block where RVFD Station 3 is now. We've been in talks with the building owners next to us, wonderful people, Stephen Tan and his sister and father, to see maybe as they redevelop 414 and 416 Hungerford that
is that ever going to happen? Yes.
Well, they were with us 2 weeks ago at the station where they met with our board. They brought on a new partner to do just that project, and they are very interested. So I think that probably has the most realistic time frame capabilities for us, that we don't have to deal with the school board. We don't really have to deal with the government. It's too private. We're a private organization, nonprofit, they're a business.
Right.
If we can develop that almost 4 acres together, that's probably our best bet.
I can just say 8 years ago, when I was first elected to the Senate, my campaign headquarters were in that building, and it was going to be imminently demolished. And I was one of the last short-term leasers, and so whatever.
Yes.
You talked about the number of women who are now interested in becoming firefighters. One of my pet peeves, and you and I have talked about this, is that the MSFA, the Maryland State Firemen's Association, is the way that acronym is translated. And I'm the legislator of the year, and I call it the Maryland State Firefighters Association on my bio, because I just think it's obnoxiously sexist. Your thoughts?
So one of the meetings I was at in Wyoming is the National Volunteer Fire Council, where they discuss 7 state organizations still have anachronistic lettering wording, Firemen or Firemen's Association. And sadly, Maryland is one of them. But I'm very pleased that this weekend or they were in Bel Air. They are meeting the executive board with a recommendation to change it to firefighters. Now, we'd like to see fire and rescue because most, like the Rockville Volunteer Fire Department and Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, which includes 19 volunteer departments, 2 rescue squads in there, 82% of what we do, of our 911 calls, 82% are EMS medical in nature. So even the term firefighter is a little anachronistic. We're emergency service providers. We're first responders. And the MSFA should reflect that. We tried this about 22 years ago. It requires a bylaw amendment from all 353 volunteer fire companies in Maryland. But I'm confident that this weekend, the executive committee is going to change to at least Firefighters Association. I'm going to say that Senator Kagan, you are a big reason because your campaign really has pushed them. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have been talking about this for years, and I got a lot of eye rolls from the guys over the years. But finally, with 3 of the largest jurisdictions having women as their fire chiefs, we banded together, and I wrote a letter, and they joined on. And yeah, so I'm hoping for a good phone call this weekend. So you referenced 911, and obviously, after 3 people have died in my district, I have spent my life for the last 4 years chairing a next generation 911 commission, and we've done great stuff that has put Maryland at the forefront nationally. So I'm really proud of all the partners and stuff. So my deep dive has been on 911. So can you talk about what happens when a 911 specialist, like the next step? So someone calls or texts, call if you can, text if you can't. If someone calls or texts for 911 assistance, and a 911 specialist starts inputting that and dispatching help, why don't you pick it up from there?
Montgomery County has one of the best centers to handle these emergencies. So it's not like in the old days where phone typed a card got sent over. It's all integrated. Right. And in Montgomery County, we have firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and supervisors that are trained, come from the field and work details there. So while they're taking that information, and a lot of residents will say to us, oh my, it seemed to have taken so long. That's perception. When you have an emergency, time drags out.
Yeah.
Even, right? First unit on the scene, we need help. It seems like forever. But while they're typing that information and everything is important to get from you, they're already telling us about the call.
Yeah.
And we're running to our units and we are responding. Many people say, I was still on the phone with the dispatcher, the operator, and I heard the sirens in the background. And so it's integrated. But I will tell you, it takes 2 years to get trained to work in our 911 center.
So
it's complex.
Absolutely. So that's why we renamed them in law as 911 specialists, because they're not call takers or call handlers or something. They do so much more than that. With the next gen 911 environment, Eric, they're going to be able to receive photos and texts, photos and videos. Why don't you talk about how that will help your folks to provide better service?
So a lot of people don't have the training that we do, right? And they'll say, well, there's a fire. Well, what does that mean? Is there a little fire on the stove? Is there food burning? Or is there fire coming out from every window? And people don't always know their address or even what city at times they're in. So we do spend a lot of time back and forth trying to figure out what's going on, where it's going on. So with all this technology, it's not uncommon for us to be responding on a scene and picking up our phone and seeing these instant news networks and people that are out taking pictures for the news already posting stuff before we get there or before we've done our assessment. One thing we learned on 9/11 is that inoperability, that inability to communicate with each other is fatal. It can be fatal. It was fatal on that day. The police had better communications. They're talking to their helicopters. Not too many fire departments have helicopters, so we're not getting that aerial view. So to be able to mesh and mold technology for us that we know less. And Chief Pfeiffer just wrote a book. He was in command on 9/11, FDNY. He lost his brother that day. His brother was lieutenant.
I just watched the CNN documentary, extraordinary video and photos. Video.
And they are such genuine people.
Mm,
He talks about, he knew less than everybody else in the world that day because he did not have CNN or any of the news
right.
channels on
Right.
TV. So having that capability that I can get, we now have phones in all the units. So we used to rely on our own personal cell phones. Now we have very specialized phones that we can also talk to the 911 specialist if our radio system goes down. All that technology we're behind, but it will help us serve our community.
Great. What are the downsides? I mean, obviously the risk to life and health. What other downsides are there to being a firefighter or paramedic?
Yes, all public safety. I would say that right now, all of public safety is suffering from a few bad apples. However you want to describe what has gone on in policing, in law enforcement, that has,
you guys?
yes.
How?
Yeah. Because most people don't understand the difference. I get called police officer all the time. Even it just amazes me, the people, when they see a badge
Mm,
in law enforcement,
huh.
and it's become pejorative, and it shouldn't.
Yeah.
These are caring people. So that's been a real downside right now. It's morale. It's tough. COVID has everybody's tired with COVID, right? We're done with COVID.
Yeah.
COVID's not done with us. And
Right.
unfortunately, we see those trends earlier. We are a volunteer career firefighter EMT, again, 82% of our calls are medical, can't say today, yeah, I'm not going to deal with COVID today. I'm not wearing a mask. We wear a mask on every call, every patient, and depending on what we think's going on with that patient, dictates what level of equipment we're wearing. So it takes us longer. It's more cumbersome. It's harder to do our job with everything on,
Mhm.
and it's taking a toll on us.
Yes.
So that is a real risk right now. And sadly, we have lost people due to COVID.
Yes.
Amazing.
So that's where I was going to go next, actually. This year, for the first time, I went to Emmitsburg for the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Ceremony. And it was amazing. And so it was beautiful. There were 215 fallen firefighters around the country who were honored, whose friends, family, and colleagues were here to remember them. And there was a beautiful service program that honored each person and told their story, included photos and all that, and honor guards. And it was, I know you've been, I'm sure, many times, but 215 is a lot of people. And some chunk of those were because of COVID. Either they got COVID, they were exposed by COVID before we knew what was going on. Yeah, anything you want to say about that?
So on average, every year, 100 firefighters die. This is in line of duty.
Yeah.
They're not all, very few times are we in a fire and that's how we die. It's usually cardiac or viruses, other diseases. So yes, this year was for 2 years.
Yes. Although we lost a firefighter in Frederick County this year in a fire.
Yes, yes.
Disoriented, I think.
Very large. Yes. It happens. It definitely happens. That's not the majority of how fire, rescue, EMS die in line of duty. Car crashes, us getting hit on the road. In December, in another week, we will remember Captain Sandra B. Cohen, who volunteered at Rockville, Deputy State Chief Fire Marshal. He was 30 years old. He saw a car accident on a Friday evening on 270, pulled over to help this person. And that person turned out to be an off-duty FBI agent. He was okay. He stayed there to help, wait for us to get there, call it on his radio. And while they were standing there, somebody hit them on the side of the road and killed them both. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Distracted driving, Cheryl. I hope that's one of your questions, because that's my pet peeve.
So we are actually, I have a few more things. I spent a day in a training academy, at the training academy.
Yes.
And I think it's brilliant that you guys host this. It's one of the best advocacy tactics out there in my 7 years in the Senate. So I can tell you, I mean, why don't you explain it better than I can, but it was everything. So it was everything from being in a fire, in a building, in a fire with all the gear on. It was climbing up ladders and going through dark spaces. And why don't you talk about that?
This is where our sisters and brothers at the IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, just did everything right. They call it Fire Ops 101.
Yep.
And it is a one day fire academy. Most fire academies, whether you're career or volunteer, takes 6 months every day. And we train you from EMT, how to drive, to be a Fire 1, Fire 2. So we combine in one day short little segments of some of that training to include, we size everybody. And so it's made for elected officials and their staff, chiefs of staff, senior government officials. So when they're talking about budgets and saying, wow, we have to give the fire department 12% more, career volunteer, again, it doesn't matter because the price of gear went up. Well, can't they wear the old gear? Or can't we buy them? We don't need to buy them the Cadillac. Let's buy them a lesser boot, for instance. And so we show the difference between a rubber boot and a custom leather boot fit for that person that's wearing it every single day or 24 hours a day, works 24 off 48. So we take you through a medical call. We put you in a flashover simulation. So there's real fire. We fitted you for gear. We taught you how to wear it, put on the mask, the SCBA, you're breathing air, and you see the fire creep over you. And we teach you, we show you how to climb the ladder and see how exhausting it is. And we guys go up one floor. When the Marlowe building here in Rockville, I've been 41 years in this business. Only one time have we had to fully extend a ladder. It was at the Marlowe building. I had to go up 110 feet in July with all my gear, and boy, I was huffing and puffing.
Wow.
So we teach you how to do that. The IFF developed it. It's used throughout the world to show elected officials what it's like for one day to be a firefighter, EMT, or paramedic.
It was exhausting, and I'm not an anxiety person, and I don't do panic attacks, but I have to tell you, when I had all this stuff on and all the gear, and I was locked into basically a train car, and then there was a fire set inside, I just about lost it.
Yes, it's a 55-foot container. Yeah, it is. And I don't know if your class did the maze. Did you go through the maze? I think we added that.
In the dark. Yeah. And going down and up and around. And yeah,
because there are no lights when the building's on fire.
Right.
That's where Hollywood gets it wrong.
Right.
The Backdraft, you remember that movie? Coats open, nobody's got masks on, they're making a little bit of smoke, they're coughing. If you're coughing as a firefighter, there's a real problem because we bring our air.
Right. Yeah. So for folks who haven't been through this, you're in a space that's about this much bigger than your body, and you're crawling, and all of a sudden there's no floor. And so you have to swing around, and then you stand up, and then there's no ceiling, and then there's no floor, and then there's no wall, and then you have to sort of make it through and out. Yeah, that was a challenge. It was interesting, and you have no visual, references at all. So let's move on. Gosh, I still have so many questions. Let's talk about the fun stuff, which is Santa Claus on the train, on the fire engines, going through the neighborhoods at holiday time. Why don't you talk about what are the goals of that? Why do you do that? And do you personally ever do it?
Yes. So most volunteer departments and some career departments here in Montgomery County, most of the volunteer fire departments do their Santa Claus on an engine. And that dates back to the 30s and 40s. And what I love, you ever watch the movie Little Ralphie? What's that? Always plays at this time of year, filmed in Cleveland. Shoot, I'm blanking on the name. A Christmas Story.
When he on 34th Street?
No. The one made in the 80s.
Oh, I was going to say Wonderful Life. No. Okay.
Yeah,
you got me.
A Christmas Story. He sticks one of the kids sticks his tongue on the pole and gets stuck, and you see the old fire truck come up. But this is a tradition. Rockville dates back to the 30s and 40s. Okay. We'll start it next week. And we go around. We used to hand out candy canes. We're touchless now. But we put a Santa Claus on. I do many nights a week, and I've been doing it every year. It's something I look forward to. My kids go in the car when they were young. Now my neighbor, my little godchildren. And we do a Hanukkah menorah run, and it's actually tomorrow. So Tuesday, that's the 30th, right?
Yep.
In Rockville, and there's Sandy Springs doing theirs also.
Nice.
We do it at Rockville through the Chabad. I believe it's
Nice.
rshul.org, and you can see starts at 6 o'clock. We go through Rockville, parts of Gaithersburg, Kentlands. We end up at the Chabad on 28.
Well, I'm hoping this is going to get posted tonight, so anyone watching it right away will learn more about that.
Yes, yeah.
Today, Eric, you were just at Toys for Tots. Why don't you talk about the goals of that and how people can contribute?
Yes. So many volunteers and career personnel were military. So I was in the Navy and I was assigned with the Marines for a little bit. So been doing Toys for Tots for over 30 years. We partner with Paul Gunther, the Montgomery County coordinator for Toys for Tots. And today we were picking up the big vans and trucks that we use to collect toys. And for the last 3 weeks, we've been handing out boxes. You can go into any firehouse, generally in the area, but definitely Montgomery County, and drop off a new unwrapped toy, and we will coordinate that through the Toys for Tots program. They have a space at Lake Forest Mall. I think we're the only store. It's the old Five Above store.
Five Below.
Five Below. Thank you.
Above would be a whole lot of money. Yeah.
Yes. And we anticipate collecting tens of thousands of toys between now and the week before Christmas. And then the Rockville Volunteer Fire Department partners with Lincoln Park community, and they have I beg your pardon?
In East Rockville, for folks who may not
Yes.
know Lincoln Park.
Yes.
A historic African American.
Yes, one of the first named after President Lincoln. After he freed the slaves. And we do that through the Lincoln Park Community Center. Anita Powell, who's on the Fire and Rescue Commission forever, longtime volunteer, wonderful person, wrote the historic map for the Underground Railroad in Montgomery County. And we'll deliver toys. And on Christmas Eve, volunteers from Rockville will go to the local shelters. The county has families that are short-term homeless. They put them up at local hotels. We have a guy who's a professional Santa, and we take toys Christmas Eve, and then we go to the Stepping Stone shelter, and then we go to the county-run shelter up by the elections office in Gaithersburg.
Nice.
All from toys donated through Toys for Tots. So
I want to start wrapping up, and we've got to get to our Fast Five. The last question, you talked about distracted driving, and I was going to talk about briefly DUID, driving under the influence of drugs. So let's talk about those together, because legalization of cannabis may be on our agenda for 2022. And I have a very serious concern about the increased incidence of impaired drivers causing fatalities and serious injuries after cannabis has been legalized in other states. Why don't you talk about both of those, and then we'll go to our Fast Five.
Big problem with cannabis is there's no positive correlation from the amount ingested and intoxication impairment. There's positive correlation with alcohol. We know you have this percentage of blood, you're probably impaired. There's nothing for cannabis. So it's more difficult. I have personal concerns. I've lost friends due to drunk drivers. I've lost friends on the job. Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Bigger problem I see though is distracted driving. Just today, I'm driving not my fire department vehicle. I'm driving a big rental van with Toys for Tots stuff. And at every light I look, the person in front of me, the person to my right, the person to my left are all on their cell phones. I don't know how much people notice when a light turns green, nobody goes anymore. You usually have to hit the horn and people get pissed and they drop their phone. My estimate, 60 to 70% of people are distracted, at least at lights. I saw a guy today while I'm driving this truck, texting and driving with his knees in a truck that had huge wheels as big as the big truck I was driving. I'm in uniform looking like, you're nuts. That's what kills people. That's what kills firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, and people on the road, not paying attention. They got to make a technology so if you're driving, you may not use your cell phone, period, at all. Done. Has to happen.
Thank you for that public service announcement. And now, Eric Bernard, Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Association. Fast Five. 5 quick questions with quick answers to let folks get to know you a little better. So question number 1, we are in the midst of Hanukkah. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Shabbos, Friday, day of rest, and then a Saturday.
Lovely. Question 2. Who is your biggest shero or hero, living or dead?
My mother. She recently lost her public school teacher, 40 years, got cancer from being a school teacher, asbestos. She adopted me. I'm adopted. My brother's adopted. Wonderful woman. Depression era, had nothing, dirt poor.
Amazing. Number 3. What is your favorite TV show to binge?
We are watching Ted Lasso, my wife and I. Love it. They got to have more. What a great show.
Everybody says that. I have not yet caught up with that. I know it's Jason Sudeikis, and that's all I know. So, okay.
Oh, what a great show. Great show.
If you could travel anywhere in the country and neither time nor money were an object, where would you go?
I want to go to Italy. I want to eat my way through Italy. Never been. I love food. When I retire, that's where Italy, Greece, we're just going on the food tour. I follow Guy Fieri. I go to all the diners, drive-ins, and dives in America. I'm going to Italy to eat.
All right. Eat, pray, love, right? But start with the eat.
Yes.
And the 5th question, Eric Bernard, the question that I ask everyone: what is your hidden secret superpower? What is something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
Wow, Senator Kagan, that's a difficult one. I don't really think I have a hidden power, except that maybe it is that I can answer questions with timely and interestingly, and hopefully not bore your watchers. And I try not to use you know.
Well, Eric, thank you. Thank you for kibitzing with me today. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for the incredible service that you provide to our city, to the city of Rockville, and to the entire county. You are really an extraordinary leader, first responder, and friend. So thank you. Grateful for you.
Thank you. It's my honor. It's nothing special, better in life than being able to connect with people. So thank you, Senator. Thank you.
Absolutely. Stay safe. I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.
Have a great Hanukkah. Be well, be safe. Hope to see everybody soon, either with Hanukkah or Santa.
Yay.